T-Mobile just had a data breach exposing the personal information of 37 million users. Verizon recently had a data breach affecting a ton of people. It doesn't seem like it's going to stop. And the way to protect your data is by using a VPN, which hides your IP address, essentially anonymizing your data and protecting you from these breaches. The only VPN I trust is Private Internet Access, which is the only VPN that has legally demonstrated they don't log your activity. You'll get 83% off. That's just $203 a month plus 4 extra months free at piavpn.com/DavidP. Day 2 of the Republican National Convention featured Kari Lake with a dangerous authoritarian warning to the media, which we will get to in a moment. And it included Ron DeSantis, who is fully kissing the ring, showing up, trying to appear as though he is a normal human capable of normal human emotions. One of the most, I would even say the most pathetic speech so far from the first couple days of the Republican National Convention that will crescendo on Thursday night with the speech from Donald Trump, the Republican nominee, accepting the nomination, is Ron DeSantis. Ron DeSantis, as you know, has struggled for a long time to appear to exhibit normal human emotions. He tried out a new forced smile last night. As many of you know, he has struggled to have a sort of real seeming smile. I understand there's a strong visual component here. I'm going to play 10 seconds and you'll hear what he says, but the most important part maybe is his very forced attempt at a smile.
Republican state.
Something very odd about this guy. He then talked about the definition of a woman while his voice cracked. And you really can't write this stuff. Take a listen to this guy.
They can't even define what a woman is.
All right, let me play that one once more for you.
They can't even define what a woman is.
He also bizarrely licked his lips the entire speech. And the act like a real person training sessions have not been working particularly well. Again, I understand, for our audio listeners, this you're lacking the visual component. But just imagine him licking his lips for 14 seconds here. All right, so just absolutely bizarre in every way. And then finally, Ron DeSantis claiming that the woke mind virus finally has been killed in Florida. They've gotten it. It's dead.
The left is in retreat. Freedom reigns supreme. The woke mind virus is dead, and Florida is a solid Republican state.
And then they would regularly cut to Trump during these speeches, during which Trump would just exhibit kind of like a doofy smile. So listen, Nikki Haley showing up and full-throatedly endorsing Donald Trump, despite previously saying he is completely unfit to serve and should not have anything to do with the Oval Office. I'm not even going to bother playing Nikki Haley's speech. It's just as sycophantic as DeSanctimonious is in all of them. Then Ron DeSantis showing up and doing his normal I'm a person sort of stuff, kissing the ring despite all of the criticisms he made of Donald Trump. What is it that is going on here? Because it is being framed as unity. It's obvious unity in the Republican Party. I think it's just brazen opportunism, which is that at the end of the day, they're all willing to say whatever they think they need to say to win. And then when they lose, they're all willing to say whatever it is they think to say to continue being given access to power. And it doesn't really matter what they truly believe. Now, what do they truly believe? I think they mostly believe Trump's a buffoon, much like J.D. Vance. And we have even more audio now unearthed of J.D. Vance's real opinion of Donald Trump, which we'll get to later. I think DeSantis deep down thinks Trump's a buffoon. I think Nikki Haley deep down knows Trump is a buffoon. The only exception, really, may be Kari Lake, who genuinely seems to think that this guy is, quite literally God's gift to American politics. I want to talk about her speech next. Kari Lake apparently taking a break from her pursuit of becoming the rightful governor of Arizona, which of course she isn't because she lost that election, taking a break from campaigning for Senate in Arizona. An unhinged Kari Lake showed up in Milwaukee last night on day 2 of the Republican National Convention to issue an ominous warning to the media, saying the media has worn out its welcome. This is exactly the type of authoritarian leaning that we are terrified of if Trump, Agenda 47, Project 2025, the Article 3 Foundation, if all of these things become enacted. And here is Kari Lake, the embodiment of it.
Oh, this is MAGA energy tonight, guys. Love it. Oh, wow. This room, America, I wish you were in this room with us. This is electric. Hello, America. Welcome, everybody who's watching at home, and welcome everybody in this great arena tonight. We love you all. Actually, wait a minute. I don't mean that. I don't welcome everybody in this meeting, in this room. The guys up in the fake news, frankly, all right, frankly, you guys up there in the fake news have worn out your welcome, right? You've worn it out, guys. You have spent the last 8 years lying about President Donald Trump and his amazing patriotic supporters. Actually, guys, they lie about everything.
Okay, so of course, Kari Lake, former TV anchor and Obama supporter, now is an anti-media MAGA Republican. And there's a bunch of things that are relevant to this. First of all, it's more of the same. Remember that the theme, the tendency, the instinct of undermining press freedom and encouraging the authoritarianism and stifling being held accountable by media, that's a lot of the reason why they're so hostile to media. They do and say horrible things, and then they don't want any kind of apparatus that will hold them accountable. They create a hostile environment which arguably can incite violence against members of the media. They polarize the public, even though they said after the shooting of Trump, they want to turn down the temperature. They're very much turning it up. They're threatening democratic norms and they're eroding civil discourse. And it's all typical Republican stuff. Trump did it when he was president. The attacks on media, you should be off the air, taking Jim Acosta's press pass for the press briefing room, all of that stuff. And they've said they're going to do it again if Trump wins. And Kari Lake is part of that. She's pushing it. She's fomenting it. That's number one. But there's another aspect to this that I think is important to mention. Since Trump got shot Saturday, I've been saying you can denounce violence, denounce shootings, acknowledge that we have too easy access to too many guns, say that we want to win by voting, not by bullets, all of those things, and still recognize that Trump being shot at doesn't change that I don't think he would be a good president. And I've been making that very clear. But Kari Lake's sort of ominous warning to the media is a reminder that this is not about policy disagreements. This is not about what should the top tax rate be. I know many people, as I have matured in my career, and many of my friends have matured in their careers, and we are all making more money than we were making 10 years ago and 20 years ago. We all, despite being on the political left, say, hey, you know what? It's frustrating when I look at my taxes and I look at the dollar amount that I pay and I see how much of it goes to the military industrial complex and all of the inefficiencies. I understand the instinct to go, hey, you know what? I don't know if the solution is to tax me more, right? Okay, and yet, of course, I respect and understand the need to have a proper level of taxation, to have a safety net. Okay, but we can all go, hey, you know what? I kind of wish taxes were lower, whatever the circumstances are. When I look at it and I see what government spends money on in some cases and the bombs and all these things, I wish my taxes were lower. That doesn't mean we go, hey, I'm going to support a movement that is completely anti-democratic and says if the Constitution becomes inconvenient, we can suspend parts or all of it. If the press becomes inconvenient, we can suppress it. The point I'm getting at here is that we can have disagreements or even general agreements with disagreements on the fringes about things like tax policy or education policy or immigration policy or LGBT rights, whatever. But this is a different animal altogether. This is a completely different political framework in which these people are operating. And it is extraordinarily pernicious. And it's just a reminder of why, okay, they shot at Trump, they missed. Killing people is not the way to solve political problems. But we still need to do the right thing in November, which means preventing Donald Trump from winning. And Kari Lake's ominous warning about the press is just the latest reminder of that. This is absolutely mind-blowing. You may recall that on Saturday, a gunman shot Donald Trump with an AR-15 rifle, and the RNC is allowing you to win a free AR-15 rifle. It almost takes your breath away. Rolling Stone reports a gunman shot at Trump with an AR-15. RNC visitors can win a free one. The assassination attempt against Trump didn't change the GOP's deadly gun politics. Just days after Donald Trump was shot, visitors with an AR-15, visitors to his 2024 nominating convention can enter to win a free, yes, AR-15. Wow. The giveaway is sponsored by an RNC vendor called the U.S. Concealed Carry Association, founded in 2003, based in Wisconsin, claims to have 800,000 members. They pitch themselves as a concealed carry advocacy group. The gun violence publication The Trace has highlighted the group as one of those scrambling to fill the NRA's void. As you know, the NRA quite beleaguered over recent years. The USCCA's membership pitch is based around obtaining insurance through the group, meant for anyone who might use a gun to kill in self-defense. To get MAGA conventioneers extra interested in membership, the group is promoting a giveaway for an AR-15 manufactured by Daniel Defense. The exact model would be tailored to what's legal in the state of the winner. Daniel Defense rifles are infamous for not being used in self-defense scenarios. The Uvalde school shooter used one. Several Daniel Defense rifles were found in the stockpile of the Vegas shooter who murdered dozens, shooting down from a hotel room, and an AR-15 was also used in the assassination attempt against Trump. And the article goes on to explain there's a QR code and then there's a giveaway. You can enter your email and phone number, and they'll also give you a situational awareness guide in order to keep your family safe. My reaction is it's completely tone deaf. The RNC is tone deaf. Republicans are tone deaf. This organization is tone deaf. You just had your guy shot with one of these, and you're saying, we'll give you a free one. Give us your email address and your phone number. Probably not a good idea. But I would be wrong. It would be tone deaf if there was any common sense here. But it is not. This is the modern Republican Party. And an attempted assassination of their dear leader is not going to stop that. If anything, they will always find a way to celebrate guns. An attempted assassination of their leader with an AR-15 doesn't mean, hey, maybe let's stop glorifying AR-15s. To them, it means let's get more AR-15s in the hands of people so that they can defend themselves. Of course, it's Trump's choice that guns are not allowed at his events. And there are, of course, those who are saying, hey, you know what the solution would have been? Because law enforcement was slow to act and Secret Service on the roof was what if they just allowed everybody to be armed, then everybody would be super safe. Well, Trump and his own security don't believe that, which is why they don't allow firearms into Trump's events. So absolutely mind-blowing that this is going on, but probably a feature rather than a bug if you try to understand Republican thinking at this point in time. Let's take a very quick break. We have newly unearthed audio from J.D. Vance. I wasn't going to deal with this, but I'm going to deal with the story that God controlled the bullet so that it would miss Trump. Of course, it ended up hitting someone else and killing them. How do they contend with that? We'll discuss all of those stories and more after this short break. There was recently a huge data breach at T-Mobile. 37 million customers' personal data was exposed, and the data stays online forever and for anyone to access. And the number of data breaches in the U.S. is increasing by about 80%. It is not getting any better. That's why it is so important to use a VPN anytime you connect to the internet. Changes your IP address, makes you anonymous. The only VPN I trust is private internet access. The only major VPN that is demonstrated in legal cases, they do not possess your internet activity, and the software is open source for the world to verify. When a company like T-Mobile or Verizon gets hacked and you were using a VPN, your data still gets leaked, but it's associated with a fake IP address, essentially, not linkable to you. Private internet access is optimized for streaming and file sharing without the lag and buffering you get with other VPNs. And one of my favorite things about a VPN is being able to access streaming content not normally available in my country, like UK Netflix. Get private internet access for 83% off. That's just $203 a month plus 4 extra months for free. Go to piavpn.com/DavidP. The link is in the description. The David Pakman Show is made possible primarily by our viewers. Get the full David Pakman Show experience. If you listen to the podcast or watch on YouTube or however you get the show, understand that all of it is made possible by people going to joinpakman.com and signing up. I do want to mention, if you misspell my last name, you'll get a virus warning. It's not because anything's wrong with our website. It's because you're spelling my last name incorrectly. I think 2-3 times a week we get an email. I went to join Pakman and it's a virus. And then I say, please, sir or ma'am, send me a screenshot. And they are on join Pakman with P-A-C-K or P-A-C. It's P-A-K-M-A-N, joinpakman.com. Coupon code SAVEDEMOCRACY24. J.D. Vance's hate for Donald Trump is even deeper and more extensive and more specific than we thought. Donald Trump announcing that Republican Senator from Ohio, J.D. Vance, will be his running mate. Immediately, endless clips and comments from J.D. Vance about Trump being noxious, America's Hitler, and so on and so forth were unearthed. There is additional new audio now, which I'm going to play for you. This is audio of J.D. Vance back in 2016 on the Matt Jones podcast, promoting his book. And you will hear Matt Jones say, I think Trump's a total fraud, and Vance saying, I agree with you. Take a listen to this.
And I cannot stand Trump because I think he's a fraud. Well, I think he's a total fraud that is exploiting these people, who is a total fraud.
I agree with you on Trump because I don't think that he's the person. I don't think he actually cares about folks.
But I think that I'm going to vote third party because I can't stomach Trump. I think that he's noxious and is leading the white working class to a very dark place.
J.D. Vance also argued back in 2016 that if white working class Americans went to church more, they would be less attracted to Trump, which kind of is true. Although at the same time, although initially the evangelical churchgoers rejected Trump and wanted Ted Cruz, they eventually fell in line because their hatred of Hillary Clinton and Democrats was more significant. So there's a couple of stories here. First of all is generically, they all kind of seem to hate him, right? I mean, you look back at the things Doug Burgum previously said, Marco Rubio, Ted Cruz, just about everybody who was being seriously considered or even less seriously considered to be Trump's VP. They all seem to have at some point really disliked the guy. The question then becomes, which we've explored a little bit, did they change their minds? Did they really do a 180? Did they have a moment where they said, you know what, all of my initial impressions of Donald Trump were actually wrong. He's actually great for us and great for the Republican Party. I just don't believe it. I just don't think there's any evidence for that, particularly when you consider that the Republican Party has lost mostly everything since Donald Trump became president in 2016. So all of these Republicans who initially said, this is not good, this guy's not good for us, their initial belief is what was confirmed by the electoral results. And so I believe J.D. Vance still thinks Trump's a buffoon. I think Trump's choices were limited mostly to people who do think that he's a buffoon. But The ultimate reason for going with JD Vance is he has at least publicly said that he will be completely and totally loyal to Trump. He's publicly said, if I were in Mike Pence's shoes back in January of 2021, I would have sent the election back to the states, which is kind of meaningless and not really a thing, but it's what Trump wants to hear. And JD Vance is at least claiming that he will be functionally a doormat for Trump to walk all over. The question is, because what is valued right now in MAGA is claims of loyalty, the appearance of loyalty, because that's all that's been tested so far. There is a question as to whether if the rubber met the road, JD Vance would be as loyal as he claims he would be, despite his obvious disgust with Trump as a functionary of the Republican Party. We may never know. And the ideal scenario would be never to put JD Vance in the position of being vice president, and we just don't find out. I wasn't going to address this because it's dicey, but at this point, it's so prevalent that I have to. They say that God saved Trump from the bullet meant to kill him on Saturday, which raises the obvious question of why God didn't save the guy that the bullet hit, and the fact that a completely innocent bystander was shot dead. It's a really difficult thing to contend with, isn't it? Here is Sarah Huckabee Sanders, absolutely vile Republican functionary, last night at the RNC, saying God intervened to save Trump from that assassination attempt.
Not even an assassin's bullet could stop him. God Almighty intervened because America is one nation under God, and he is certainly not finished with President Trump.
There you go. And a standing ovation for that. They always seem to know exactly what God is thinking and doing. It's interesting. Then we see Vivek Ramaswamy jumping on the exact same thing, made particularly interesting since Vivek is Hindu. We'll talk about that in a moment.
Swamy to give us his perspective on what he thinks. Vivek, it's great to have you on the show. It's a horrifying day for the United States of America. I want your thoughts. When you first heard about this, what went through your mind? What's going through your mind now?
What's going through my mind now, first of all, is we heard the story of that person, an innocent, enthusiastic rally goer who was shot and killed. First, our heart goes out to them and our condolences goes out to that family. But I should say this, Trace, is that I personally believe that God intervened today, not just on behalf of President Trump, but on behalf of our country. If you think about this, 1 centimeter's distance in the path of a bullet was the future of not only Donald Trump's life, but I think the life of the United States of America. Imagine what we would be talking about today were it not for a hair's length difference in the path of a bullet.
So Vivek is Hindu. I wonder which God he believes intervened. Is it the Christian God that Vivek presumably doesn't believe in? Is it the Hindu God intervening on the behalf of a Christian, but allowing, I believe, the guy who was killed, also a Christian, to die? We have to contend with that. And then as a kind of bonus, as whacked as this is, Megyn Kelly had an even crazier version of this, I think based on some kind of numerology.
Was shot at 6:11 p.m. A couple people have sent this to me. 6:11 p.m. You read Ephesians 6:11.
Right.
In the Bible. It reads as follows in part. Put on the full armor of God so that you can take your stand against the devil's schemes. 6:11, he was shot, and that's 6:11.
All right. So that is, it seems completely delusional what Megyn Kelly is saying. I'm not even going to deal with that. So think of the problems with this idea. The idea that God intervened so that the bullet grazed Trump's ear rather than killing him. First of all, it implies some kind of selective divine intervention. It saved Trump, but still allowed the bullet to graze him, but it allowed the death of an innocent person. Or maybe we are to assume that person wasn't innocent, which is also an extraordinarily disturbing thing to suggest, and also arguably devastating for the family of that victim. If God has the power to redirect the bullet, why not prevent the assassination attempt altogether? Why not prevent the shooter from being born? Why not make the gun jam so that nobody gets killed? And it leads to this very troubling moral stance implicitly, where the life of one individual is deemed more valuable than the life of another. Well, God could have, I guess, intervened to save everybody on that day, but only intervened to save Trump. Trump's life must be more valuable, I guess, than the guy who died. It conflicts with many religious teachings that emphasize the equal value of all human lives, which many of the very same Christians now arguing this say every life is sacred, even at conception. And yet God intervenes only to save Trump. And of course, if I'm a family member of the victim who was killed by the bullet intended for Trump, it trivializes that tragedy experienced by the family and by the loved ones of the innocent bystander. Imagine being a family member of the victim. Now, of course, if you confront them with this, they will come up with things. God works in mysterious ways, or I'm misinterpreting this, or I'm misinterpreting that. The sort of Jordan Peterson thing, which is like, no. You're just not understanding what we really mean and what God really means and what God is capable of and all. They'll come up with something. But of course, you only need a pretty basic analysis to understand the really serious problems with this. And I just played you 3 examples of it. There are many, many more. Let me know what you think of it. CNN host Jake Tapper allowed Eric Trump last night during an interview at the RNC to again push the "they tried to kill Trump" hypothesis. And of course, the question is, who is the they? It's a 20-year-old Republican. That's what they is. And so they're doing this in every interview now. I played a clip yesterday from Monday. Now we have a clip from night 2. Here is Eric Trump.
They tried to take his life. That was the final attack, and thank God it didn't work out. But then he walks in here to just a sea of love, and as much reporting as you've done from in here, I know how much love you've seen in this room. Yeah. The American flags, the red hats, the people who love America. They're proud to be American. They want America to be number one at everything we do. They're patriotic. They love our Constitution. They love religion in this country.
All right, so you get it. There's no pushback on they, and Eric Trump starts this by saying they tried to kill him. They is one registered Republican. And, I'm being a little facetious here, but it's Republicans who love to say there are 2 genders. There's he and there's she as far as pronouns go. Him and her. They singular shouldn't ever be used. They love to argue this in the context of trans. They don't like they singular. And now Eric Trump every single day in multiple interviews is talking about they tried to kill my dad. But they is one 20-year-old Republican whose motive we still don't know, but potentially is motivated by some of the same ideology that motivated Alex Jones a few months ago to say the best case scenario is actually killing Trump. So my desire would be that while trying to be sensitive to the fact that Trump did survive an assassination attempt, we get a little more about the they and the disaggregation that needs to happen between they tried to jail him, they tried to impeach him, they tried to kill him. Well, impeachment is a political process involving members of the House and Senate. Indictment is a judicial process involving prosecutors and investigators. The assassination attempt is one 20-year-old Republican with an AR-15 and explosives in his car in Butler, Pennsylvania last Saturday. I wish interviewers would push back against it. Let's see if they do in the next couple of days. Don't forget that the best way to support the David Pakman Show is by becoming a member, which gives you access to the daily bonus show, the regular show with no commercials. You also get access to our entire archive of every episode dating back a really long time and plenty of other awesome membership perks. Go to joinpakman.com, joinpakman.com. Today, we're going to be speaking with Luke Beasley, host of The Luke Beasley Show, longtime on-again, off-again David Pakman Show correspondent. Luke actually found himself in Butler, Pennsylvania on Saturday, interviewing folks at the time of the failed assassination attempt against Donald Trump. We actually have a little bit of video of that we're going to play for you here.
Biden's a capitalist. What are you talking about? He's a capitalist. He's a socialist. Maybe, yeah. Yeah, it is.
What is that?
All right, we are in, where are we? Butler, Pennsylvania, at a Trump rally, and everyone's running away because we think we just heard gunshots. As you can see, everyone's running away there. And we have no idea what's happening right now.
The president, go that way. Somebody, he says he's bleeding from his ear. Go that way. Trump is bleeding from his ear. Somebody was shooting.
Y'all don't know what happened?
No.
Assassination attempt, I think, or shooting. 3 gunshots. Hey, come on!
So what people are saying, we have not confirmed this yet, but is that Trump was shot in the ear. But we're still waiting to get more information.
So Luke, listen, that is extraordinarily intense video. I mean, just to start with and walk through this, when you got to the rally, was it just like any other Trump rally you've been to? Was the security any different? Some people said it was scaled back in some way. Did you notice anything different about security?
Didn't notice anything differently, except for in reflecting, one of the things that people have been saying, you sort of referenced it there, is, well, surely this is because they didn't have enough resources there. That had to be the issue. But as is the case with any of these events, a Biden event or a Trump event, there's security everywhere, Secret Service everywhere, law enforcement everywhere, which I think gets to why I have a hard time believing this was a lack of resource. And it feels like there had to be some sort of lapse, mistake, miscommunication, miscoordination for what happened to have happened, because there was still a massive law enforcement presence. And that always causes a logistical nightmare to get into the event. And so that was clearly present, which makes the tragedy that much more tragic.
In the video we saw, when the shots ring out, you seem to be kind of on like a dirt path of some kind, or a gravel path. And tell us, is that true? It seemed like you were right in the middle of just doing one of your normal interviews. Where were you in reference both to the stage and the shooter?
So often, because of how many cameras and microphones, Secret Service isn't hyped about us going in through the magnetometers actually into the event. So we were right before you would enter into it. And you're right, it was a gravel path conducting a normal interview. And as you could see in the video, it just took a long time to figure out what exactly was happening. And initially the thought, I think, for most people was that fireworks? And because we were just far enough, we couldn't see what was going on the stage. Really, we were just reacting to the crowd reaction, which gets to something I may get into in more detail later, which is just the phenomenon of a mass crowd crisis event and how quickly misinformation about what's happening, how quickly that spreads around and confuses everybody. But we were just on the outsides. That made it even more confusing because we couldn't see the stage.
At some point, were you able, before you left, to see the location of the shooter relative generally to where the stage was and get like an in-person sense of how close the two were to each other? Like, we know it's I think they said 130, 160 yards, but being there, did you get a sense of how far this looks?
So as we were in the video, you saw sort of jogging away. The parts we didn't get when we stopped recording was when we would sort of stop and look around, talking to people, what's going on right now. And one of the things that we did take note of was, okay, as we're figuring out that this was probably an assassination attempt and not some sort of mass shooting of the crowd, which was our initial thought for some reason, then we started looking around at where the wannabe assassin, the shooter, would have been. And our thought was surely, because we didn't know it was that building, but you could see it so closely. And so it was surely it's not that building, because that would be the most obvious place where they would definitely clear off. You would expect even law enforcement to be up on that roof based on the past events I've seen, just given that it really was in person, so close, and such a clear, a clear, I don't want to say shot, but that's what it ended up being, to the stage. You could see very clearly from the stage to that building.
How long was it when you go fireworks, mass shooting, assassination attempt? That knowledge, how many minutes did it take?
So I think you saw in the video for the audience the shift between, for a lot of people, fireworks and shooting, and then between, is this just a mass shooting of the crowd or something different, quite some time, because I think there wouldn't have been necessarily an evacuation so quickly if everyone knew what had really played out, because very quickly the Secret Service were able to neutralize and kill the shooter. So then it was safe again. But I guess there was the question even then of there being an additional shooter, at least that concerned. So I'd say it was 20 minutes, half an hour for a lot of people, because the internet reception was really bad, to figure out that it was safe where we were. Immediately people started storming out of, and I think you saw some of this on the video, out of the event territory. And that, I think, plays into people thinking this, not knowing what was going on. But then, to my earlier point, what was fascinating in sort of a dark and unfortunate way was just how many different certain stories I was hearing as we were making our way out, talking to other people. People saying, no, I'm certain he was shot in the chest, or I was certain that he's still laying out on the stage, and
he being Trump, right?
He being Trump, right?
Yeah.
And I am certain there were 2 different shooters, and there were 15 shots that went off, and just all of that type of stuff. To me, because I've never been in this type of situation where you're in a large crowd as a crisis happens, informed me on how it's so understandable that sometimes the press will get all these conflicting reports about what people are seeing on the ground. That was very noticeable.
There were, on video, there was this moment that was confusing where right after the shooting happened, there was sort of like, you could sense a group in the crowd being angry and yelling at someone. It's later been reported that it was kind of yelling at the media and saying, you caused this sort of stuff. Did you notice anything like that? Did anyone yell at you at any point? Or do you have any thoughts on that aspect of it?
So right after, I will be honest, in our conversations with people, interestingly, right after we went probably a mile away trying to get cell service to just some random pub, bar, a little bit away from the event. And there I did feel pretty uncomfortable, knowing that if anyone knew who I was or asked for specifics about who I was, they would feel some sort of rage towards me, which logically wouldn't make sense, because we're as opposed to this violence as anyone else. And this gets into the immediate response on the ground from people is the same thing playing out across the internet and right-wing media, etc., which is trying to unfortunately use this situation, regardless of the facts, because we're getting facts that indicate it's probably not even a left-winger, but to further exacerbate tensions, to further divide people and generalize or connect the shooter to, oh, that's the Democratic Party. They did that just like they tried to prosecute Trump. And so that response that we're seeing play out more broadly was the immediate response from people on the ground too, of wanting even more revenge and feeling like this was something that Biden should be blamed for.
Has this made you rethink going to these events? I don't know if it's 20 or 50 or 100 of these that you've been to so far. I know it's a lot. What's your thought about going to future ones?
No, people always ask, even before this, that sort of question, does it feel unsafe? And my answer has often been, oh, there's nowhere that's safer because there's so much law enforcement present.
Right.
Or law enforcement presence. And that is a confusing prospect, like I mentioned earlier, given what ended up taking place. But no, I don't think so. For me, what's far more scary is as more of these videos get more views, the prospect of someone being really upset with me and recognizing me is a little bit more frightening, as sometimes happens, just because they, it's sort of their dream to come across me here and then give me a piece of their mind. So that's more intimidating than an event like this happening again. But definitely still shocked by what happened.
This is going to sound so silly, but it's actually, I've just been reading a book that kind of relates to this. Do you ever, what about altering your appearance in subtle but effective ways? And there's so many different ways to do it, whether it's hair, eyebrows, I don't know. Like, is it the sort of thing where you would say, I want to figure out a way to keep doing it in order to allay some of those fears? Or you're considering, I don't know if this is really the right thing for me?
No, I think it's too, even in the moment, but then definitely in people's viewing of it, just too engaging and fascinating to stop going altogether.
Wow.
I've never thought of a disguise, to be honest. That's a new thought I'm gonna have to consider. One thing I don't like, which is why I try to rarely do this style of interviews, with love to anyone who does it this way. I hate the idea of sort of misleading. You see some people who will sort of pretend like they're on board to get them
Yeah.
to say something crazy. I try to be pretty upfront, and maybe a disguise would make me feel even more like I'm misleading them, but that would be interesting, maybe even more fun.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not talking about dressing like a clown necessarily, but I just mean,
Just a
subtle,
mustache or
subtle sort of
something.
things. So let's get back to the aftermath. So we see a bunch of it in the 70-second clip we played at the top of the interview. You eventually get out, you go to a pub that's nearby. What's the scene at the pub? Everybody knows what's going on and where it went on?
So for quite some time, anyone walking the mile, I think that it was in between where the rally was taking place to the pub, a lot of people were just trying to find somewhere with cell reception to tell their family they were okay, and in our
Gotcha.
case, trying to get in contact with the person who was going to take us home. And so there was still a lot of confusion, but it was the pub where the TVs were on and they had Wi-Fi. And so that's where everyone just surrounded around the bar and just watched the TV. And so similarly to all of you, if you immediately jumped on and watched the TV reporting about it, we were getting the exact same information for the first time in actually understanding what happened. And so it was just a whole group of people surrounding the bar TV and being informed on what we just witnessed and experienced.
Was there any information that started kind of being passed around in the pub environment that ended up being completely wrong from the conversations you overheard?
I will say the pub environment was where everything started to get clarified, because they had a couple different outlets reporting on what was going on. One thing that everyone has heard was it was a teleprompter, piece of shrapnel actually was the thing that hit the air. That ended up not being the case. So that was something everyone thought could have been the case. But no, it was more so right after it, people getting to their cars and standing around trying to decide if they were going to leave or what was going to go on, and hearing what people were saying very authoritatively about what took place. And some people saying he's passed away. We saw it. He's done. He had been killed, Trump, that is. And that turned out not to be the case, luckily. And then some other just random details of how many shooters, where Trump was originally shot, if someone in the crowd had been hit, stuff like that was wrong until we got informed at the pub.
This next question maybe is more relevant to when you were still at the event in the kind of aftermath and starting to get out and everybody trying to figure out what was going on. There was this very brief moment where, MAGA Mike Johnson says we need unity, and all of a sudden everybody's doing very empathetic interviews with the people that were there, and everybody's kind of friends and united. And it was so brief. And then all of a sudden, all of the crazy politicking just went right back. They're raffling off an AR-15 at the RNC, despite the fact that that's the type of firearm that was used here. All this crazy stuff, everything's kind of back to it. Trump's posting his stuff on Truth Social. Was there any moment there where all of a sudden the very palpable divisions in worldview between you and these Trump supporters that you've now experienced at dozens of these rallies evaporated? Was there any moment of that while you were there?
No, but also I didn't get the experience of seeing how they would respond to the fact that I am not on their side ideologically, because for all the people we were spending time with in the aftermath, we didn't take note of that and just sort of interact as if we were also in the audience, or left it neutral. So I didn't get to see how they react. But unfortunately, I will say the ideology does go deep, because even before people had gotten their signals from right-wing media, there was this instant rage towards Biden. I kept hearing, Biden, see, he tried to take him off the ballot. He tried to get him out of the race through prosecutions, and now he tried to kill him. And in the moment, of course, as you've been reporting on your show as well, it's just, how could that possibly be the same individual? And is there any evidence Biden has any involvement? Of course not. Immediately trying to lower the temperature, even the opposite of what they were thinking. But it shocked me. I always sort of had the feeling that people needed to be told by right-wing media certain things to then go out and express them, especially something as provocative as the left as a whole tried to do this, even as it's a registered Republican. But actually, they're primed enough to instantly jump into that sort of thinking. So that was actually really depressing.
Do you have any different experience or belief about or opinion about this incident by virtue of the fact that you were there? And the reason I ask is most people who are aware of and weighing in on what happened weren't there. You happen to have been there. And there's a question, this comes up when people weigh in about, should we be in a particular war or whatever? You unless you were there, you don't really, in this particular case, I mean, is there really any difference at all that you can articulate by the fact that you were there and lots of the other people commenting on it like me simply were not there?
As a general rule, I don't like when people make such an argument. You had to be there, because I think most of the time you can just be rational, observe the facts that you can, and come to a correct conclusion, even if you haven't been in the exact situation being discussed. And that stands for this too. The only thing is I have seen not elected Democrats. I just appeared on Piers Morgan's show a couple days ago.
I saw that.
Yeah, debating with a guy just sort of talking about this. And I don't like seeing, even though it's not coming from elected Democrats, which was the point I kept making on Piers Morgan, a difference between powerful Democrats denouncing this universally and powerful Republicans joking whenever it was Democrats being attacked. And so there's a contrast there, but there still are people on our quote unquote side, however you would define it, who are making light of it. And I think the most accurate thing I could say about being there that makes my stance unique or informed it in any way was just, even though I'm arguing with most of the people in those interviews, it's still often so friendly, as you've seen, laughing. And I was actually laughing right before it happened. And people are getting their hot dogs and just sort of talking, and with their family and kids are there. So experiencing it that viscerally makes me even more upset, even though I'd already be.
Yeah.
When people make light of it, because we would not accept that in any situation, and we shouldn't accept it in this one. So that would be my only thing. But otherwise, I think people's responses are about the same as mine.
Very trivially, Luke, before I let you go, understanding this is a transition, how bad in general is the food at these rallies, and how bad are the Sanny cans?
I honestly don't know what the second thing is that you said.
Oh, porta potties.
Oh, okay.
Might be a Northeast thing that we call them Sanny cans.
I have to say, you named the two things that are top of the list for me to avoid when I go to these events. So I don't think I've ever eaten a piece of food from one of these rallies, so I couldn't tell you. And I try to make sure that I'm completely restroomed out before we get there.
Got it. All right. Luke Beasley, host of the Luke Beasley Show. You can find his YouTube channel at, actually, we have a shortcut at davidpakman.com/Luke. Luke, thanks for talking to us, and obviously glad that you're safe.
Thanks, David.
If you value what we do at the David Pakman Show, remember to support us on Patreon. Go to patreon.com/David Pakman Show, where you can get access to behind the scenes videos, the daily bonus show, the commercial-free daily show. You can support the show for as little as $2 a month. Check it out at patreon.com/David Pakman Show. In the aftermath of the failed assassination attempt against Donald Trump on Saturday, Trump spoke on the phone with Robert F. Kennedy Jr. This phone call, apparently despite RFK's intentions, was recorded and now has been leaked. And the content of this phone call is extraordinarily troubling. There are two elements to this. First of all,